Now diagnose primary open-angle glaucoma diagnosis and treatment. Okay, previously we discussed in details what is primary open-angle glaucoma. Now we will diagnose and treat primary open-angle glaucoma. If you remember from the characteristics of primary open-angle glaucoma, there was an increase in intraocular pressure. So we will measure the intraocular pressure with tonometer. This is called tonometry. There was optic characteristics, optic disc changes. Okay, so we will analyze the optic disc with fundoscope. This is called fundoscopy. There were visual field defects. Okay, so in order to measure the visual field defects, we will analyze it with perimeters. This is called perimetry, and we will analyze the interior chamber angle, whether is it open or closed. This analysis of the interior chamber angle with gonio lens. This is called gonioscopy. Okay, so we will diagnose the primary open-angle glaucoma with these devices. Now, treatment. Primary open-angle glaucoma can be treated by three mechanisms, by three methods. The first is the medical treatment, and the second is the laser, and the last resort is the surgery. Okay, first of all, remember we indicate medical treatment. Okay, so what are the medical options for primary open-angle glaucoma? We have drug groups like prostaglandin analogs, beta blockers, alpha 2 agonists, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, and miotics. Remember, prostaglandin analogs and beta blockers, these are the first drug of choices. Okay, so prostaglandin analogs, how they works? Prostaglandin analogs, they increase the aqueous outflow through uveoscleral route. As we noted in the primary open-angle glaucoma, there is the trabecular meshwork is occluded. Okay, so this prostaglandins analogs, for example, the latanoprost, travoprost, bimetoprost, these drugs, they increase the aqueous humor is produced from these processes. Okay, so this is a reverse flow. It increases the aqueous outflow through this uveoscleral route through the choroid layer and the suprachoroidal layer. This fluid will be absorbed through the choroidal veins and intrascleral and episcleral veins. Okay, so this is the reverse flow. This is called uveoscleral outflow, and this prostaglandin analogs works by this mechanism and remove the extra fluid from the posterior chamber. Okay, and hence posterior chamber. The prostaglandin analogs decreases the intraocular pressure by 27 to 33%. That's why it is the first treatment of choice. It decreases IOP by 27 to 33%. Okay, although it is very effective, but it carries some side effects. For example, periocular region, iris, they can be hyperpigmented. Lashes, the eyelashes can prolong and they can be hyperpigmented because the prostaglandins analogs will also increase the blood flow. So because of the blood flow and nutrition, more nutrition supply, it will cause the hyperpigmentation of this structure, plus it can cause headache. Okay, so these are the side effects with prostaglandin analogs. Now we can also use beta blockers. How beta blockers works? As the aqueous humor is produced from ciliary processes. Okay, so this epithelium, the double-layered epithelium, there are beta receptors on these, and these beta receptors, they are involved in the production of aqueous humor. So the beta blockers will act on these beta receptors and they will block the beta receptors and will inhibit the aqueous humor production. And that reduces, like the prostaglandin, they reduces the intraocular pressure by 23 to 27%. Okay, near to the prostaglandin. The drugs which are present in the beta blockers, which can be used, for example, they can be cardioselective and non-cardioselective, such as timolol, betazolol, leobonolol. Okay. The side effects with the beta blockers are that it inhibits the beta receptors, so it can cause bradycardia, cardiac arrest, and bronchospasm in the patient, of asthmatic patient. In asthmatic patient, if we get non-selective beta blockers, it will constrict the bronchus and will cause bronchospasm. Okay, so these are the side effects with beta blockers, but they are effective. Okay. And there are no if these are suitable. For example, if the patient is not the patient is normal, it is not asthmatic patient, or it is not a cardiac patient, so we can indicate beta blockers. Now, if these two drugs are not used, or if they are not available, then the second drug of choice we can have the alpha 2 agonists. Alpha 2 drugs agonists, for example, brimonidine, they decrease the IUP by two mechanisms. First of all, there are, like the beta receptors, we have the alpha receptors. So the alpha 2 receptors are also, okay, there are alpha 2 receptors. And unlike beta receptors, the alpha 2 receptors are for the inhibition of aqueous humor. So alpha 2 agonist will enhance the activity of these alpha 2 receptors and will inhibit the production of aqueous humor. Plus, the alpha 2 agonist increase the aqueous outflow through ureoscleral route. Okay, so by these two mechanisms, the aqueous humor decrease production and withdrawal from the posterior chamber will decrease the intraocular pressure. Okay. Now, we can also use another drug group, which is carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, for example, dorzolamide and acetazolamide. They also, like the beta blockers, they also decrease the production of aqueous humor and will decrease the aqueous humor production, and hence IUP will be decreased. Okay. Remember, the last drug group is the miotics. As the main function of the miotics, it is the ciliary muscle contraction and pupillary constriction. Okay, it causes miosis. So, and the main role is that it increases the aqueous outflow through trabecular meshwork, but the trabecular meshwork is blocked. So, what is the role of miotics then? That's why we do not use miotics in primary open-angle glaucoma alone, but we can use in combination with these drugs. Okay, in combination with these drugs, miotics can be helpful, but if we use it alone, it is not effective because its function is to increase the aqueous flow through trabecular meshwork, but it is blocked. Okay, so these were a few of the medical options through which we can treat primary open-angle glaucoma. If the medical treatment fails, and it happens in most of the cases, with the passage of time, medical treatment fails. So what will we do? We will then indicate laser treatment. Okay, we have argon laser trabeculoplasty, selective laser, and micropulse laser trabeculoplasty. What are we doing in argon laser trabeculoplasty? We are applying argon laser to this blocked meshwork. Okay, to these occluded trabecular meshwork, we are applying argon laser. This is called argon laser trabeculoplasty. So it will make some space and will open these occluded areas and can be effective. Okay, they are saying that it decreases IUP by 8 to 10 millimeter of mercury. Okay, so it can be effective. Now we have another laser treatment, which is selective laser trabeculoplasty. This selective laser trabeculoplasty, it uses a laser called Ned and Yeg laser. Okay, they are ultra micropulse laser. They are selective, means they are only targeting the melanin pigments in this trabecular meshwork, and hence open and make some space for the aqueous outflow. And the last one is the micropulse laser trabeculoplasty. In micropulse laser trabeculoplasty, we are using such a short micropulse, ultra short pulse lasers that they do not cause any physical reactions in the cells of trabecular meshwork or in the trabecular meshwork. But although the micropulse laser trabeculoplasty, it activates it, as we noted that the cells in the primary open-angle glaucoma, the trabeculocytes, they are damaged and some are dropped out. So the damaged cells can be activated by this micropulse laser. And these cells, when they are activated, they will perform its job and they will make some space for trabecular meshwork. So these are the laser treatments. But now, if the laser treatment fail, then what will we do? Ultimately, the last resort with us is the surgical treatment of primary open-angle glaucoma. In surgical options, we have two types of procedure mainly. We have trabeculectomy, and which is a penetrating surgery, okay? And we have the non-penetrating surgeries, deep sclerotomy and canalostomy. In trabeculectomy, what are we doing? We are connecting this interior chamber to the subconjunctival or subtenon space, okay? This is connected to the subconjunctival or subtenon space. And what are we doing? We are doing another thing. We are also doing iridectomy. Iridectomy means we are also removing some part of the iris, okay, the peripheral iris. So it will bypass this pupil and it will directly the fluid will be drained from the posterior chamber into the interior chamber and then to the subconjunctival space. This is called trabeculectomy. If I told you that these diagnoses and these different surgeries of glaucoma, they will be discussed in details in separate lectures because they are important, okay, and they needs explanation. But I am giving an overview, okay, that what are these procedures and what is the role of these procedures in primary open-angle glaucoma. Then we have the non-penetrating surgeries. In non-penetrating surgeries, what are we doing? We have the deep sclerotomy. In deep sclerotomy, we are only breaking this trabecular meshwork, okay, and we are connecting the interior chamber directly to the Schlemm canal, okay. We know that the Schlemm canal is surrounding this interior chamber, okay. So we will directly connect this interior chamber to the Schlemm canal, to the surrounding Schlemm canal. This is called deep sclerotomy. And another non-penetrating surgery is called canalostomy. In canalostomy, we are from the outside, we are injecting a viscoelastic substance in the surrounding Schlemm canal, okay. In the Schlemm canal, we are injecting viscoelastic substance and we are dilating the Schlemm canal, okay. The Schlemm canal is dilated with viscoelastic substance. This is called canalostomy. So these were the surgical procedures. Okay, so this was about the primary open-angle glaucoma. Previously we discussed its detail, its pathogenesis, clinical features, and now we have discussed the diagnosis and treatment. I also have prepared notes. I will give you the link in the description. You can also go through the notes and can learn more. Thanks for watching the video.